20 minutes. That is how long an AI agent took to do what cost a human analyst an entire week. It read the data, wrote the report, reviewed its own text, and sent the email. No coffee break, no asking for an extension, no complaints. And when people saw that, the reaction was almost always the same: fear. The profession is over. The job will vanish. But hold on to that fear, because it is answering the wrong question. The right question is older, stranger, and far more interesting. What happens to a human being when the task that defined their work simply disappears? The good news is that history has already answered this many times. The bad news is that this time the answer arrives faster than any generation before yours ever had to face. Over the next 30 minutes, I will show you the pattern that is repeated for 200 years, why it is accelerating, and the part almost nobody connects: what it does to your identity, your career, and even how many years you will work. This is not a prophecy. It is a projection. But if it is even close to right, it changes what you should be doing starting today. Let us start by dismantling the most common story about technology and work, because it is half true, and a half-truth is more dangerous than a whole lie. The optimistic version goes like this: relax. Every time a technology destroyed jobs, it created others, so it will be the same now. The ATM did not end bank tellers. The spreadsheet did not end accountants. The internet created millions of jobs that did not exist. All of that is true. But notice what this story hides. It talks about totals and ignores concrete people. Yes, in the aggregate, new jobs appear, but they do not appear for the same people, in the same place, at the same time. The weaver who lost his craft in 1810 did not become a machine engineer. He died poor, and it was his grandson who maybe climbed. The transition is smooth in the statistics and brutal in the biographies. So when someone tells you it is fine because it always worked out, ask, worked out for whom and how long did it take? Because that is exactly where the problem lives this time. And to understand why this time is different, we first need to understand why. Every other time, it was the same. Come with me. 200 years back. 1810, England. A weaver spent his whole life mastering a manual craft that took years to learn, moving the loom shuttle with his own hands, at the right rhythm, the right tension. It was pure skill in the body. Then came the mechanical loom, and that specific gesture evaporated. The weavers revolted, smashed machines. They were the Luddites, and lost. But look what happened to the next generation. It did not sit still. It climbed a level. Instead of moving the thread, it operated the machine that moved the thread. The human was pushed upward, from gesture to supervision. Now, jump 100 years. The 1980s, the electronic spreadsheet. It destroyed the work of armies of bookkeepers who added columns by hand all day. A profession vanished, and yet the number of people working in finance exploded afterward. Why? Because when the sum became automatic, the human climbed to the next question. Not, how much does this column add up to? But what does this number mean, and what do we do with it? See the pattern? Every wave of automation did the same thing. It retired the task below and promoted the human to the layer above, the layer of judgment, interpretation, decision. The machine eats what is repeatable. The human climbs to what is not yet. Keep that pattern as the key to everything, because now I need to show you its hidden cost, what it does to your head. There is a cost in that climb that economists almost never mention, and that psychology will not let us hide. It is this: we do not have professions. We are our professions. Notice, when you meet someone, the first question is almost always, what do you do? And the answer is not information about that person's income. It is a statement about who they are. Work is one of the central beams of adult identity. It gives structure to your day, belonging to a group, and a story about your own worth. So when a skill you took 10 years to master suddenly becomes something an agent does in 20 minutes, the blow is not only financial, it is existential. The expertise that was your source of pride, I am good at this, it cost a decade, loses market value overnight. And that is why the reaction to new technology is always more emotional than rational. People are not just defending the paycheck. They are defending the story they tell about themselves. Any projection about the future of work that ignores this is incomplete, because the hardest part of the coming transition is not technical. It is about identity. Wait, because the next part shows exactly why this transition, this time, will hurt in a new way. So, if the pattern is always the same, the machine climbs, the human climbs with it, why are so many serious people worried this time? The answer fits in one word: speed. In the previous waves, the next layer was always just above, and the transition took an entire generation. The weaver could live his life without having to reinvent himself. It was the son or the grandson who entered the new factory. There was time. Time did the work of cushioning the blow. Now think about what changed. The earlier machine, the loom, the spreadsheet did one thing very well. Today, artificial intelligence is not a tool for a task. It is a tool for learning tasks. It generalizes, and it improves in months, not decades. When your skill takes 10 years to mature, and the machine learns to do it in 6 months, the math no longer works like before. It is not that the upper layer disappears. It is that it rises too fast for the person to rise along with it at the pace of a human life. It is like climbing a staircase while someone removes the lower steps at your speed. That is the real squeeze. And it is from there, not from mass unemployment, that the only honest way out comes. But before the way out, I need to show you where work is really going. Look. Where does work go then, if the pattern holds? Let me be explicit. This is a projection, not a certainty. And anyone selling you certainty about the future is selling hype. But if the logic of the last 2 centuries keeps holding, the worker of the next decade does not disappear. They become a conductor. Just as the weaver became an operator and the bookkeeper became an analyst, today's professional tends to become the orchestrator of agents. Instead of writing the report, they decide which question is worth answering. Instead of doing the task, they direct a team of artificial intelligences that do it and judge whether the result is any good. Value migrates from the hand that executes to the mind that governs the whole. Think of an orchestra conductor. They play no instrument during the concert. Their value is not in performing. It is in knowing what each instrument should do, when, and why. That is exactly where human work is being pushed, toward conducting. And here is the nexulous turn, the competence this makes central. When the machine masters every isolated task, what becomes scarce is not depth in one thing. It is the ability to see the whole, to connect the engineering piece with the market piece with the human piece. The machine is unbeatable at the narrow and deep. The human becomes irreplaceable at the broad. At joining pieces, nobody programmed to join. But if work becomes conducting, a dangerous question appears. How many times in a life will you have to relearn to conduct? And the answer has to do with something that seems unrelated to AI: how long you will live. Now bring together 2 trends that are almost never discussed in the same room, because the picture they form together is the whole point of this video. The first, we are living longer, much longer. A child born today in much of the world has a real chance of crossing 100, and the science that extends healthy life is advancing fast. The second, the half-life of a skill is collapsing. The competence that sustains you today may be obsolete in 10 years. Now, cross the two. 100-year life with skills that last 10 means the human of the future will not have a career. They will have 5, 6, maybe 7 professional lives within a single biological life. The model you inherited, the one your parents lived, study until 20, work the same thing until 60, rest. That model simply no longer fits the arithmetic. It was designed for a short life and a long skill. We are entering the opposite. Long life, short skill. And that rewrites everything. Education, savings, marriage, identity, meaning. You cannot retire from one version of yourself at 60 if you still have 40 years of life and 3 reinventions ahead. The question stops being, what is your profession? And becomes, how do you reinvent yourself without losing yourself? Keep this, because here longevity stops being a medical subject and becomes a work subject. If you are going to live long and no specific skill lasts, then the most valuable skill is no specific skill. It is the skill of acquiring the next one. Think about that for a second, because it is counterintuitive. School taught you that success is specializing. Pick one thing, get very good at it, harvest the fruits for life. That advice was great in a world of slow change. In a world of fast change, it becomes a trap, because the specialist who only knows one thing is fragile exactly when that thing changes. What protects you is not depth in one skill. It is the speed of learning the next and the breadth to connect what you already know with what is coming. That is why I call it the nexialist competence, the ability to cross domains, to take a pattern you learned in one area and carry it to another. The machine will master each specialty. The human who thrives is the one who knows how to jump between them. The deep generalist who understands enough of many things to see the connections that the specialist, locked in his tower, never sees. In a life too long for a single career, knowing a lot about one thing is fragile. Knowing how to cross is anti-fragile. But how do you actually become that? Because concept without action is just anxiety with a nice vocabulary. Let us land. So, in practice, what changes starting today? 3 things, and none of them requires you to become a programmer. First, stop measuring your value by the task you execute. That is exactly the layer the machine climbs first. Measure it by the judgment you exercise over it. Ask yourself, in any job, is the part of me that matters the execution or the decision? Consciously migrate from the first to the second. Second, treat your capacity to learn again as your main asset, more important than anything specific you already know. In practice, that means deliberately learning things outside your field, even if they seem useless now. Each distant field you touch becomes a possible bridge later. What looks like dispersion is, in fact, training the meta skill. Third, learn to work with the machine, not against it. The one who gets replaced is not the one who uses AI. It is the one who does not, competing against the one who does. Start today with the most boring and repetitive task you have and hand it to a tool. Not to escape work, to climb a layer and discover what is left of you when the repeatable disappears. Because what is left is exactly where your future is. I owe you an honest objection, because it would be dishonest to paint this as a guaranteed happy ending. Everything I have said so far assumes the historical pattern continues. The machine climbs. The human climbs with it. There is always a layer above. But what if this time the machine climbs all the layers? What if there is no top left for the human to climb to? That is the possibility that keeps very serious people awake, and I will not pretend it is impossible. It is not. The difference between a tool that does a task and an intelligence that learns any task is a difference of nature, not just of degree. So the honest answer is, nobody knows. What history gives us is not a guarantee. It is a bet with a good track record. 200 years of the upper layer always having existed. Betting against that record is possible, but it is betting against everything that has ever happened. And even in the darkest scenario, the strategy does not change. The most protected person is still the one who learns fast, connects domains, and exercises judgment. If there is a safe place, it is that one. And if there is no safe place, then at least that is the least exposed. It is not a comforting certainty. It is the most rational bet with the information we have. Let us leave the abstract because you must be wondering, okay, but what about my job? Here is a map, and it might surprise you. Everyone's first intuition is that the machine comes for manual and physical jobs first. Wrong. Physical automation is expensive and hard. Folding a towel still defeats the best robots. What AI devours first today is repetitive white-collar work. The kind done sitting in front of a screen, following a pattern. Writing a standard email, summarizing a document, generating a first draft, classifying, transcribing, doing the first version of almost anything. Professions that seem safe because they required a degree are, in fact, the most exposed because their work is precisely standardizable. And what resists? Two opposite ends. On one end, non-routine manual work, the electrician who enters a different house every day, the cook, the caregiver. On the other end, high-level judgment work, strategy, negotiation, original creation, decision under uncertainty. What is squeezed in the middle, predictable office work, is exactly what is under pressure. So the question to ask yourself is not, is my sector safe? It is the part that matters of my work routine and standardizable? Or is it judgment and relationship? Be honest in the answer, because it tells you exactly which way to run. There is a layer of this that goes beyond money, and we need to face it because it explains why this subject stirs people so much. Work was never only about income. For most of modern history, the job was where people found purpose, structure, and dignity. It answers every day a silent question: what am I for? Now imagine adding two things. One, part of the routine work that gave that meaning being absorbed by the machine. Two, decades more of life to fill. You do not just have an economic problem on your hands. You have a meaning problem at mass scale. What does a human do with 30, 40 more years of life in a world where the machine does much of the tasks that used to give purpose? That is one of the most important questions of the century, and almost nobody is asking it. The Nexialist answer is not nostalgic. It is not let us protect the old jobs. It is another. If the machine frees the human from the repeatable, it opens space for the human to do more of what is only human: to care, to create, to teach, to connect people and ideas, to give meaning. The risk is not running out of work. The risk is running out of purpose before we learn to redefine what counts as work worth doing. Here is the part that turns all this from philosophy into a decision, and it has a deadline. There is a moment in every great technological transition when the advantage is disproportionate, the moment when the technology is already good enough to deliver results, but not yet common enough to be taken for granted. Whoever enters that gap shoots ahead. It was like that for those who learned spreadsheets in the 80s, the internet in the 90s, digital marketing in the 2000s. They were not geniuses. They were just early. And we are right now in that gap with artificial intelligence. Most people still look at this with fear or indifference, waiting for it to pass. That majority is handing you an advantage for free, because the ability to work side by side with AI agents, knowing what to ask, how to direct, how to judge the result, is a new skill. And whoever develops it now will look, a few years from now, like they have a superpower. Not because they are smarter, because they started earlier. The window will not stay open forever. A few years from now, using AI well will be as basic as using email, and the advantage evaporates. So the question is not whether you will learn this. It is whether you will learn it while it is still an advantage, or later when it becomes mere survival. That choice, start now or start late, may be the most important career decision you make this decade, and it is entirely in your hands. Now let me bring it all into a single idea, because that is the one I wanted to stay with you. The story you were told is that technology takes jobs. The true story is stranger. Technology does not take work. It pushes the human upward, layer by layer, faster and faster, until the only thing left that is exclusively human is the ability to connect, judge, and reinvent. Join that with longevity and the picture sharpens. You will live long, you will work on things that do not have names yet, and you will need to become several professional people across a single life. That scares you if you cling to a fixed identity, but it becomes freedom if you understand the rule of the new game. The rule is this: in the world that is coming, you are not what you do. You are the speed at which you learn to do the next thing, and the breadth with which you connect everything you have done. The machine got good at being a specialist. What is left for the human is the most human thing of all: to be the bridge, to see the whole, to give meaning. That was always the hardest work, and now it has become the only one the machine cannot steal. Let us land for good. None of this is guaranteed destiny. It is the most likely direction if history does not invent a surprise, which it loves to do. But if the reading is even close to right, you leave this video with 3 compasses. 1. Your value is no longer in the task, it is in the judgment over it. So practice deciding, not just executing. 2. Your most important skill is not what you know today. It is the speed at which you learn the next. So cultivate learning as a muscle, deliberately, for life. 3. In a long life, the one who connects is worth more than the one who specializes in one thing. So seek breadth, touch distant fields, become the bridge. The profession you have will probably not die all at once. It will become something else, and then something else, and then something else. The question was never whether you will change jobs. The question is whether you are becoming the kind of person who crosses those changes standing instead of being run over by them. The future does not belong to those who know more. It belongs to those who learn faster and connect better. And that, unlike any specific skill, you can start building now, this minute, after this video ends. Here at Nexialist Futures, we do not recap the news of the week. We project what it means for your life, connecting technology, history, psychology, and economics into one thing. If this makes sense to you, subscribe, because the future gets a lot less scary when someone explains it to you before it arrives. In the next episode, what the humanoid robots in factories reveal about the future of the work we do with our hands. Until then, keep crossing.